it's Christopher with Simple Septic Secrets, and I just worked on a system that was put in the 40s. It was totally saturated. There was a giant oak tree growing over the top of the outlet pipe, and nothing was working at all. In fact, when the customer used the water or flushed, it would come out of the hole in the tree. It was totally crazy. We ended up putting in a 40-foot leach line, two 33-inch pits that were 25 foot deep. We had to run a line all the way across their driveway and into the back. It was we pretty much tore up their yard from one end to the other. So check it out, and I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing step by step. It's pretty simple if you understand how to do it. We got permits with this because where we live you have to get a permit, and it's always better to get a permit anyways because basically you're protecting the customer. They're going to come and inspect it and make sure you did it right. So step one when you're putting in a job like this is you have to mark the utilities first to make sure there's no gas lines, electrical, whatever. There could be all kinds of stuff buried under there. And even if you're positive that there's nothing buried there, definitely just mark it for USA and have it checked out, because there's been times where the customer's like, hey, there's nothing here, nothing to worry about, and we have it USA like always, and turns out there's a massive service line that's 12-inch gas line that goes from there to the next town. So definitely gotta USA it just to make sure. Second step is going down to the health department and getting a permit. In some states that may not be required, but here in California you need a permit to wipe your ass. You go down there, say this is the property, this is what's happening, what can we do to fix it? And even though I can design these systems myself, a lot of times I like to just ask them and say, hey, what do we got to do to get this thing going again? And depending on the area, they're actually going to make you do different things. So once you got your permit, you got to order all your parts. So I draw on a piece of paper what I'm going to do, how much material I'm going to need, and I order ahead of time just to make sure I got everything. I usually order a couple of everything just to be sure, because you never know what you're going to run into. At this particular job, I was actually really worried because there's a huge tree. See that right there? The massive tree growing out of right over the top of the outlet pipe. In fact, the water would come out of that hole when they would shower. One of the major concerns I had was digging too close to the root system and weakening the tree so it can fall over, because it's actually leaning hard towards the house. So I went out of my way to dig around some of these roots. Another concern I had was that pipe coming out of the septic tank is directly under that tree. So if we can't get a good connection, the tree's going to have to come down. So there's the pipe right there, completely full of roots and sludge. So I didn't pump the septic tank until afterwards, because I wanted the force inside the septic tank to push whatever through there. And that way I can show that I had good flow. In this case, once I started poking around in there, the water just came rushing in, which showed that we actually will have a good connection and there's flow from the septic tank to the new leach line that I'm putting in. The only mistake I made was I scheduled our pumper to be there way too late, so there was a lot of standing around while I waited. So that's a mistake I'm not going to make next time. I'm going to have the pumper there on site first thing in the morning waiting for us to dig that up. Next, we're going to get out the long tape measure and mark everything out. Now this is actually very important because there's certain setbacks. The end of this leach line has to be at least 5 feet away from the pit at the end, and the next pit has to be at least 10 feet away from the other pit. So it's very important that you have these setbacks set correctly, because you could end up putting the whole entire job in, and when they come to inspect it, they can fail the job. Then you'll have to re-drill the holes and move it around, and it'll be a nightmare. And here's our drill rig right on time. This thing's a behemoth. It can actually drill down up to 50 feet deep. Although in this county we can only go 25 because that's what the rules are. I think it has a lot to do with the water table. This thing's massive. So another mistake I made, I was actually going to have him put the hole right next to that white fence over there, but unfortunately I didn't consider the giant boom that has to stick up, so we had to move it out a little bit further. Not a big deal, just cost us a little bit more in pipe, a little bit more digging, and next time I'll be sure to make sure and not make the same mistake. So the way it worked out, I actually got to stand here and watch him drill. Normally he does his thing, I do mine, but since the pump truck wasn't here yet, I had plenty of free time to get some good recordings of him drilling that hole, and I ended up got some really cool slow motion shots, and I even put the drone up and I got some really cool footage flying around it as he was drilling the hole. This thing is a really cool piece of equipment. It's old, but it does a great job. It's basically a giant drill. It just drills into the ground, and when he goes up, he spins it and all the dirt falls off. I think he spins it the opposite way, I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm going to let him do his thing because the pump truck's about to get here and we got to get going on hooking up this leach line. Alright, now that the pump truck's here, we can finally get this water out. I wasn't able to do anything because if I was to start digging, all that water would come out of the septic tank into my trench and make a huge mess. So we can get that pumped down, and I can see now that we got great flow from the septic tank. You can see the water just pouring in. That's a great sign. That means when we hook up the new pipe right there, as long as we can get a good solid piece, it'll work great. First got here, I was super excited because I thought I had found where the Keebler elves make all their cookies. So I viciously pulled all the wood off so I can get into my tasty prize. And when I looked inside there expecting to find a bunch of warm, baked, delicious goods, I was so disappointed because all I found was shit. I still think this probably was their house, but I think what happened is they passed away from old age, and what I was smelling in there was just their decomposed bodies. Or possibly they moved and this is just old, disgusting ingredients that they left behind that went rancid. I'm not really sure yet. I'll keep you updated on that part. Since this is supposed to be a how-to, let's take a step back. Before the pump truck got here, I dug directly in line with where that pipe is coming out of the tank because I want to find it. I didn't want to smash it up with the excavator, but I wanted to find it, see what kind of condition, and hope and pray that we can still hook onto it without having to either cut that tree down or drill another hole inside the tank. The other guy who came out suggested we just drill another hole and don't mess with it, but I really didn't want to go through all that. Alright, now you're caught up. So I carefully dug down to the pipe with the excavator, using the excavator as much as possible, but then eventually we had to jump out and do it by hand. As you can see, there's a long root that's going right across there, and I was doing my best to keep as many roots there as possible since this tree is so big and it's leaning right towards the house. So we still don't know what kind of pipe's going to be down there yet at this point, so we got to carefully dig by hand so we don't tear it up. But we know we're close because the rocks are all black and nasty. It's a sign that the leach lines have been failing. So here we have a 4-inch terracotta or clay pipe, and it's actually in great condition. So we're going to end up hooking onto this with 2 rubber hubs or rubber fern coes, the 4x clay, and we're going to end up putting a T in the middle to connect the two. But I'm going to jump over here and take some pipe off the truck. These are 2 20-foot SDR 35 perforated pipes, and I'm going to cut one down the middle, and I'm going to make 2 30-foot sticks. So usually you try to line the lines up when you're putting perforated pipe together. It's not as important here because we're sticking it vertically down the pits. So once you get that pushed in all the way tight, we're going to let it dry, and I'm going to carry it over here to the pits. Alright, let's stick this long pipe all the way down the hole. You basically stick it on one end, just walk it all the way up like that, kind of pull it, and slowly just guide it all the way down. So deep. Yep, more? Alright, I'm all the way in. Perfect. So what I'm going to do here is attach 2 fern coes, one on each side. These are 4-inch by clay, and in the middle I'm going to use a straight T to head towards our new leach line. So I measured the gap in between the 2 clay pipes, then I cut a longer piece of SDR and I put a T in the middle of it. I basically made it the same length all the way across, and I counted for the size of the T, which is like 9 inches or something, I'm not sure. Then what we do is we slide the rubber hubs on both sides, set it in, make sure it's a good fit, and then slide the rubber hubs back onto the pipe. In this case, we're just setting it in to make sure it fits, and then I'm going to take it back out so I can dig for the new leach line. I'm going to put a mark right in the middle where we're going to be digging. Alright, we're finally going to be digging. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to cut a trench across the driveway because we have to run a tight line, which is basically just a solid pipe without any holes in it, from over here where the septic tank is to the other side of the grass. Now it would be much easier just to rip a leach line right through the driveway, but the only problem is when you're putting in a leach line, you don't want to be driving on top of it for a couple different reasons. One, you're going to compact the soil down and it can settle on top and water can pool there. And 2, the more important reason is because when you compact the soil really hard like that, then it doesn't evaporate. Most people don't realize this, but leach lines, the water doesn't just flow down into the ground. Actually, a lot of it gets absorbed through the sun. So the sun actually draws the moisture up through the soil and out into the clouds or wherever it goes. So you want to slide both the rubber hubs on each pipe there and get them snug, and then stick the level across it and make sure that it's going to be level going towards your new leach line. Once you're all set and the pipe's level, grab a laser and set it to right at the bottom of the pipe there. You don't have to use a laser, but that way you don't have to keep on digging it, throwing a piece of pipe in, putting a level on it, pulling it out, and all that. So if you have it set with a laser, you could just check it along the way and you know it's going to be good by the time you get to the other side. Alright, and finally my rock's here. It's only 4 hours late, but hey, you know what? Not a big deal. So I go to the driver and I tell him the different hand signals. Thumbs up means raise the bed slightly. Above it, thumbs down, hold, and if I start swinging my arms, put the damn thing down as fast as you can. So I gotta slowly dump it in there because I don't want to overfill the pit because it's a huge pain to get it all out of there, and plus I don't want to put too much rock on the ground because I don't have a backhoe. I only have an excavator, so it's very difficult to move rock. I got to get it just right. Now this one's going to be down about 5 feet, and the reason it's 5 feet is because we're using the measurement from the leach line on the other side over there. After he dumps everything we need in the hole, I'm also going to have him pull up and dump a little on the ground for a stockpile, because once everything's hooked up, we're going to want to cover those pipes with about 6 to 12 inches of rock to make sure they're protected. Now the driver's got to transfer his second trailer into the back so he can dump the load. And when he was transferring the trailer over, it's supposed to lock in place, but there was a rock, or I don't know why it wasn't locking. So he hit it a few times, and when he pulled it back, it pulled that lever up, and boom! My day just got longer. A bunch of rock got all over the ground right there. And since I don't have a backhoe and a way to easily scrape it up, I had to go back over there and check it out. And the only way we could really get this cleaned up is with a shovel. So I got 3 shovels, and my brother and I and the driver pulled the trailer out of the way and got to work. This took us about 20 minutes to do. Doesn't seem like that much rock, but it took us quite a while to do. And one of the mistakes I made was I loaded up the tailgate way too heavy, and I didn't put anything over the cracks, so I got a bunch of rocks in my tailgate. Big dumb mistake. I pushed it all back, and before I left I had to dump a bunch of that rock off onto the customer's driveway because that's where he wanted it. Alright, let's get this other hole filled in, carefully around that artichoke that I worked so hard to not destroy, and we dumped the rest of the pit. I couldn't get them lined up just right because that pile of dirt and the artichoke was in the way, so that was fine. So let's go ahead and fly over here and see what we have to do to get this job finished, because I got an inspection at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's already about 4:35. So we went to work digging quick, and we got the tight line put in pretty much all the way to the edge of the driveway where we're going to set a distribution box. The distribution box is where the water gets distributed equally to the different leach lines, and in this case there's only one leach line. We have to make sure the pipe from the tank to the distribution box is level. So we're going back through, shading it up, lifting it up, and making sure that it's perfect. On a long run like that, if you have too much fall, or any fall really, you end up having the pipe really deep by the time you get to the other end. So once we get the pipe where we want it, I take the distribution box, and see those little black things on the side? We basically just cut those out, and you can slide the pipe right onto it. It's pretty easy. The hardest part is getting it all level underneath and making sure that the pipe to the tank is level and the distribution box is level from side to side. So sometimes you gotta put it on, pull it off, you gotta dick with it a little bit, and eventually you get it just right. And from there you can move on to putting in your leach line. So we're gonna use EQ24 infiltrators with 2 end plates. Basically you have to just drill out the top right there where you're going to put the pipe, and you connect the end plate to the infiltrator and screw it on. I didn't do a very good job of documenting it because it was late and I forgot. So once we get the first chamber set up, let's take a step back. In order to get it set up properly, after you have your distribution box set in place, you need to set the laser to the bottom of the distribution box, right where the pipe comes out. Get it so it's level, and then add 6.5 inches. That's going to give you the difference between the infiltrator end plate and the bottom of the distribution box. And once you have that set up, you can start digging. It's usually a good idea to get the first chamber set up before you start making your way down further, just to make sure everything's level and it's flowing like it's supposed to. In this case, I wasn't able to get the fence down, which is a huge mistake. Next time I'll cut the damn thing down, because it ended up taking me like 45 minutes to an hour longer, because I wasn't able to just keep backing up until I was at the spot I needed to be. And also every time I had to go around to the other side, I would have to go down the road at 2 to 3 miles an hour. It would take me 5 minutes each way to go there and back. So definitely won't be making that mistake again either. If a fence is there, it's got to come down. So once we're on grade, we just start digging. I was stopping where I knew the sprinklers were because I marked them. I was digging them out and then cutting them. The customer's going to go back later and fix them, But the reason I didn't just tear through them is because if I grab that pipe and pull onto it, it can yank it out 25 feet away, and it's a huge pain in the ass for the customer. The way I do the job is I have a responsibility disclaimer, and I let them know I'm not responsible for your sprinklers. I can cut them out of place and mark them for you, but that's just not something I do because I don't want to get caught up fixing sprinklers. So as you can see, I have to dig sideways here, basically on both sides, and then I have to put the excavator over the top of the trench and span both sides. Then carefully get back off of it and go all the way down the other side. This held me up for at least another hour. I could have easily just dug it normally, but in this case I had to keep spinning around, and on top of that there was a ton of roots inside there. So I kept digging on both sides until I was finally able to bring the leach line all the way up to that white fence, and at that point it was 7:30 in the evening, and I'm like, hey, there's no way we're getting this done tonight. So I used a whole bunch of caution tape, got it all secured, and I left for the night. Day 2, we got here bright and early. I actually got here a little bit late. I got there about 8:15, and surprisingly the inspector had already come by, and he said, you know what, everything looks great. Only thing I'm going to need you to do is send me some proof that you tied in the pit. So he already checked the level of the pipe from the tank to the distribution box to make sure it was level. He checked the chambers from the distribution box to the chambers to make sure it was level and to make sure the chambers were level. Also, he checked to make sure we were far enough away from the well and the neighbor's well. He basically had, there's a whole list of setbacks that are probably like unique to each county, and he went through and made all those measurements to make sure we were good, and said, you know what, send me the connections and I'll sign off on your copy of your permit. So today all I got to do is get the pipe from this side of the fence into both those pits, tie them in, document it, cover the top with rock, and once that's all done, you can slam the dirt back and get out of there. By slam the dirt back, I mean spend the rest of the day carefully backfilling it. So there's actually quite a lot of digging still left to do. I have to reach under the fence with the excavator and dig up to where the pipe's going to be going to the pits. We have to set up the laser, make sure our pipe's going to be level, and start digging. As I start to back towards those pits, I have to either dig on the side of them, or I have to put the pit right in between the tracks and span over the top of it, which you want to be careful doing because that's kind of dangerous. Gotta go down. We're at right there at the end. So the customer had a really cute husky that was very well behaved, and he told my brother, hey, bring your dog so they can play. So my brother bought his puppy, and the dog absolutely loves that little pond thing over there. It's like a little dog bath thing they made for their dog. So the way we're going to connect these pits is with sanitary tees or straight tees. Basically we lay the pipe level right till I get right up next to it, and then I stick a tee right in line with the pipe, and then we're going to do another tee in line with, vertically in line with the pit. And the reason we're going to do these pits with tees is so they have an inspection port on top. So there's a couple different reasons why you would do this. One, say I had this all hooked up like I was supposed to before the inspector got there, he would need to pop the cap on the inspection port, stick the tape measure in there, and make sure that the pit is the proper depth. The other reason is in the future, if the customer ever has an issue, they can pop the cap and see if water's getting into the pits or how high the water is, or they could dose it with a bacteria in order to treat the pit if they're having trouble. So you technically could use a 90 once the pits have been measured by the inspector. You could pop a 90 on it. You'll probably never find the pits again because once you put the dirt on top of there, it'll be difficult. I'm gonna have about a 3-foot plug of dirt on top. Also, when you put the rock over the top of the pits, you don't want to fill the pits all the way up to the surface. You want to put a little bit of rock completely covering the pipe, put some paper on top, and then put dirt on top of that. Because if you were to take the rock and bring it all the way up to the surface, then you're going to get a ton of rainwater in there every time it rains, and it's going to fill up your pits. So you do want to have some sort of soil plug on top of the rock. Now that everything's tied in, one of the most important parts, it's just as important as making sure you have everything hooked up correctly and glued, is shading the pipe. You want to put a bunch of fresh dirt all around the pipe and you want to stand on it, pack it in, smash it in with the shovel, you should be able to walk on top of the pipe without having it flex, because if the pipe's flexing when you're walking on it, imagine what it's going to do when you put thousands of pounds of dirt on it. You're going to have a big U-shaped pipe. So packing that dirt in there and stepping around it and smashing the shovel around it and just doing whatever you can to get the dirt packed in around the pipe without lifting up the pipe is very important. But once you have that done, then when you go to put the dirt back on with the excavator, it makes it a lot easier and you're not worried about messing it up. After editing this video, I realized that the hydraulic is actually leaking. Good thing I didn't leave it too long, it would have taken the fence out. Well, that's good to know. All I got left is to get the rest of this dirt on the other side of the fence, and the customer said he'll take it from there. He's going to use it in his garden boxes. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up this video. Luckily, everything went according to plan. I did make a few mistakes and ended up having to work 2 12-hour days, but other than that, everything went exactly perfect. This was the first job I did since my dad passed away in 2019, and is also the first job that I've done myself, from starting the estimate to calling in the USAs to pulling the permits and scheduling the rock and ordering the drill and the parts and all that other stuff. So I'm definitely going to do things a little bit different next time, but if you're not learning and growing, then I don't know what you're doing. Hope you guys liked that video. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work. It was me out there moving GoPros around, attaching them to the tractor, sticking them on fences, every few minutes hopping off the excavator and attaching them to other stuff. So I'm grateful I did it, but man, you YouTubers, these outros. And I thought, what better place to do it other than this beautiful view over here on my walk every day. I'm going to walk every day over here. It's absolutely gorgeous. Got the river over here. Got a beautiful sunset behind us. So yeah, hope you guys liked the video. Leave me a comment. It really, really does help. And yeah, let me know what you think. All right.